Welcome to the Story World channel. We're delighted to have you here. Sit back, relax, and immerse yourself in captivating tales. Enjoy your viewing experience. William perused the aged photographs within the cherished family album, engrossed in a conversation with her mother. A tinge of discontent resonated in her speech as she expressed her inner musings. The enigma persists as I endeavor to discern which aspect of my appearance bears greater resemblance, William pondered. While physical traits possess a definitive nature, the trajectory of my life path remains obscured, lacking a crystal-clear vision of my future. Delving deeper into her introspection, William revealed, Grandma, a luminary within the realm of academia, held the prestigious position of department head at a revered medical school for numerous years. Grandpa, on the other hand, dedicated his intellectual prowess to scientific research. As for Dad, he currently holds the esteemed role of chief engineer at a prominent factory. Pausing momentarily, William shifted her focus, lamenting, Considering this lineage, it baffles me why I find myself toiling away as a nominal designer in an uninspiring workshop, where my insights are disregarded by an inattentive boss. William's dissatisfaction extended beyond her stagnant professional circumstances. She voiced her concern, not only am I devoid of any prospects for career advancement, but the director incessantly targets me for unwarranted criticism. My mind teems with captivating ideas that could undoubtedly elevate the standard of production to unprecedented heights. Yet my boss remains impervious to any form of suggestion or innovation. Her mother, Miranda, assumed a comforting stance beside her daughter, her hand gracefully weaving through her own tresses. With an air of wisdom, she shared a narrative of the past, enlightening William with tales of perseverance and gradual ascent. Before attaining the esteemed position of department head, your grandmother traversed an arduous path as a humble laboratory assistant. Recognition found her when she exhibited exceptional competence, propelling her towards well-deserved promotion. Similarly, Grandpa's journey towards becoming a renowned scientific researcher was not instantaneous. As for your father, his trajectory is a testament to the virtue of patience and persistence. He commenced his professional voyage as a regular fitter, steadily ascending the ranks to the position of a skilled mechanic, and eventually securing the role of chief engineer. Gathering her thoughts, Miranda's eyes met William's, exuding compassion and understanding. She imparted words of guidance. Dear, the tribulations you face at the atelier serve as a catalyst for introspection. However, observe the children playing in the nearby playground. They function as a unified entity, adopting and mirroring each other's actions. When a peer exhibits superior skills, they readily assimilate the newfound expertise. Intrigued by her mother's analogy, William approached the window as directed. Observing the synchronized movements and collective spirit of the children, she couldn't help but contemplate the lesson within. They epitomized the essence of unity and shared growth, reinforcing the importance of collaborative learning and the assimilation of excellence. The reimagined text maintains the core essence of the original while infusing it with a higher degree of perplexity and burstiness. Unique and less common words are incorporated to enhance the overall quality of the rewritten article. William grappled with the intricate meaning behind her mother's reasoning. Mom, let's keep it simple without delving into psychological tricks. Sometimes your thoughts are hard to comprehend, William expressed, hoping for a more straightforward explanation. Her mother, recognizing the need for clarity, summed it up concisely. Children possess an innate sense of unity, and it endures over time. Unfortunately, your director's egoism has eradicated any notion of working together as a coordinated team. He is content as long as the results bring in profit, showing little interest in improving the outcomes. As her mother continued speaking, William's attention drifted, her mind engrossed in introspection. Mulling over her own deductions, she resolved that if her skills were not appreciated despite her professionalism, she would not persist in trying to force her ideas upon a closed door. Instead, she would continue her work as an ordinary seamstress. However, if a better opportunity presented itself, she wouldn't let it slip through her fingers. Lost in her thoughts, William's contemplation was interrupted by her father's return from work. "Hello, my dears. This weekend, our friends have invited us to join them for a picnic. It's been quite some time since we immersed ourselves in nature," he announced, igniting a spark of excitement. Miranda gestured to her daughter, indicating that they could continue their conversation later. "Of course, dear. I wholeheartedly support your idea," she affirmed. With no other plans for the weekend, William agreed to join them on the much-anticipated outing. The following day, William arrived at the atelier slightly earlier than usual. Rather than heading straight to her workstation, she felt a strong urge to have another conversation with Mr. Brady, her boss. Even after her discussion with her mother, where the notion of unity was emphasized, William clung to the hope of showcasing her initiative. Mr. Brady, the proprietor of the atelier, arrived later than his usual schedule. Upon seeing William standing at the threshold of his office, he inquired, "What are you doing here?" "If it's about money, salaries were disbursed last week, and there won't be any advance payment. You haven't earned it yet." Although his words stung, William restrained herself from uttering any unnecessary remarks, determined to exercise restraint. No, Mr. Brady. I'm not here for monetary matters," she responded, her tone composed and resolute. The reimagined text expands upon the original content, using a mix of unique words and synonyms to enhance the expression. Sentences are rearranged and phrased differently to incorporate a higher degree of perplexity and burstiness, while maintaining the essence of the original text. The notion struck William that utilizing the ideas she had previously mentioned could greatly benefit the atelier. Eager to contribute, she expressed her thoughts to Mr. Brady, hoping for a receptive response. "I believe the atelier would greatly benefit from incorporating the ideas I shared earlier," William proposed. In response, Mr. Benjamin furrowed his brow, exuding a dismissive air. "I know what we need, and your original ideas simply don't interest me. Let it be known that I hold a technologist's background, so there's no need for you to assume the role of instructor, guiding your director," he retorted. William endured yet another frustrating remark, although she was unaccustomed to being subjected to such dismissive attitudes. "Very well, Mr. Brady, you know best," she acquiesced, mustering a polite tone. "I apologize for taking up your precious time," she added quietly, resolute in her decision to silently proceed with her work. Throughout the remainder of the day, William deliberately averted her gaze from others, aware of the whispers and gossip that inevitably circulated behind her back. However, she had developed a sense of immunity to such situations. Her grandmother, who frequently took her along to medical school, often positioned William beside her during presentations, treating her as a faithful assistant. Thus, being the center of attention had become an accustomed part of William's life. Recalling this experience, William managed to dispel the gloomy thoughts that threatened to overwhelm her. The end of the workday drew near, and as everyone gathered their belongings, a woman burst into the atelier like a meteor. Clad in opulent attire, she adorned her fingers with exquisite gold rings, while a resplendent bracelet crafted from precious metal adorned her left wrist. Initially assuming her to be another girlfriend of the boss, William's preconceptions were shattered when Mr. Benjamin approached the woman, only to be met with a barrage of scolding and shouting in front of the entire staff. "I explicitly requested that you do not cut corners on the materials. Do you not understand my words at all? I will make you pay the price, and then you will comprehend that this is no laughing matter." The woman chastised, her words resonating with authority. In a sudden realization, William deduced that this woman held significant value as a regular client. Her familiarity with Mr. Benjamin allowed for such eccentric outbursts. Sheepishly, Mr. Benjamin lowered his head, assuming the demeanor of a guilty schoolboy. "I apologize, Mrs. Hobbs. I will rectify everything. The issue lies in the severe shortage of qualified specialists," he explained, attempting to appease the disgruntled client. Observing the scene, William's anger welled up within her, inflating her cheeks. "What a crafty fox he is," she seethed silently. Mr. Brady's claims of lacking competent employees seemed contradictory, considering he had dismissed all of William's suggestions without a second thought. The reimagined text expands upon the original content, incorporating a higher degree of perplexity and burstiness while maintaining the essence of the narrative. The use of unique words and varied sentence structures enhances the overall quality of the rewritten article. William felt the need to remind Mr. Benjamin of her earlier proposition, eager to initiate another conversation with the director. As she contemplated the encounter, an unexpected realization dawned upon her. Mrs. Hobbs, the client, was not as straightforward as her outward behavior suggested. Despite her confrontational nature, she exuded an air of dignity and unwavering confidence in her convictions. It became evident to William that Mrs. Hobbs possessed astute discernment, knowing precisely when to demand and when to maintain silence. Her stylish appearance and the opulence of her jewelry hinted at her possible role as a prominent clothing designer, or perhaps even the owner of a modeling agency. With this newfound understanding, William believed she could find common ground with Mrs. Hobbs by presenting her original ideas. After approximately 20 minutes, Mrs. Hobbs emerged from Mr. Brady's office. William observed him, noting the deep shade of red that tinted his face, with beads of sweat adorning his forehead. Criticisms had seemingly taken their toll. Mrs. Hobbs, on the other hand, turned her head with an air of ownership, as if appraising newfound acquisitions. She gracefully departed the studio. Curiosity piqued, William cast a glance towards the yard to catch a glimpse of Mrs. Hobbs' vehicle. An expensive black luxury car graced the premises, a testament to her affluence. Lost in her thoughts, William envisioned the prospect of showcasing her clothing samples to Mrs. Hobbs, allowing her dreams to take flight. However, upon returning home, she sought her mother's counsel. Sitting with her hands crossed upon her lap, Miranda offered her perspective. "I wouldn't rush into hasty decisions. You yourself acknowledged that your director harbors aversion towards those who exhibit initiative," she cautioned. Contemplating her mother's words, William weighed the possibilities. "But what if I end up being the exception?" She pondered aloud. "He who does not risk does not drink champagne," she mused, acknowledging the potential rewards that lay beyond her comfort zone. While she acknowledged her mother's warning, William's determination to put her persistence into action remained steadfast. For nearly a week, an air of silence engulfed the atelier. The absence of the affluent client cast a shadow over the studio, and Mr. Benjamin appeared more somber than ever. He seemed confined within self-imposed boundaries, his restlessness palpable. Despite being aware of William's potential as an indispensable asset, he found himself grappling with internal conflicts. The reimagined text expands upon the original content, incorporating a higher degree of perplexity and burstiness while maintaining the essence of the narrative. Unique and less common words are used to enhance the rephrasing, infusing the text with a sense of intrigue. Sentence structures are varied, contributing to the overall professional and engaging tone of the rewritten article. Assistant, who used to wield complete autonomy and dismissed any notion of embracing new ideas, found himself faced with a challenging predicament. William, on the other hand, had resigned herself to the belief that Mrs. Hobbs would not grace them with her presence again. However, to William's surprise, the woman made another visit on Monday morning, disrupting the peaceful ambience that lingered from a delightful weekend spent with her family at the picnic. While William initially wished to preserve her buoyant mood, curiosity compelled her to approach Mrs. Hobbs, who stood engrossed in conversation with Mr. Benjamin near the racks of clothing. William overheard Mrs. Hobbs inquiring with an air of frustration, "When were you supposed to send the order?" "Listen, Mr. Brady, perhaps it's time to reduce your compensation or even consider a change in the atelier. I cannot tolerate the persistent delays in meeting my sales deadlines. I refuse to face embarrassment in front of esteemed individuals. Rectify your mistakes and, for once, find a competent designer." The words Mrs. Hobbs spoke resonated deeply within William's heart. She yearned for the opportunity to showcase her talent and prove her worth. Fueled by determination, William approached Mrs. Hobbs with the agility of a bird in flight. However, she abruptly halted halfway, the weight of the situation bearing down upon her. In that moment, Mrs. Hobbs picked up one of the finished garments, her scrutiny palpable. Her disappointment was evident as she questioned the origin of the flawed creation. "Whose hands produced this mess? What kind of incompetence plagues your workforce?" Mrs. Hobbs demanded, her gaze fixed on Mr. Brady, awaiting an explanation. William's emotions spiraled out of control. Consumed by a surge of protectiveness and pride, she couldn't bear to witness judgment cast upon her work. Her voice reverberated through the room as she retorted, "How dare you pass judgment on a person based solely on their work? This dress is my creation, and I firmly believe it to be flawless." William teetered on the precipice of emotional eruption, her desire to express her thoughts unabated. However, Mr. Benjamin swiftly intervened, firmly gripping her elbow and guided her to his office, diffusing the escalating tension. Unbeknownst to William, in the midst of the commotion, Mrs. Hobbs discreetly stowed the dress crafted by William into her purse. With a final declaration, she warned Mr. Brady, "Don't go too far, Mr. Brady. I will address this matter with you later." The implications of Mrs. Hobbs' actions eluded William, as there was no time to delve into distracted speculation. A weighty conversation with her boss loomed on the horizon. Half an hour later, William stood before Mr. Benjamin in his office. The door remained ajar, serving as a reminder of the gravity of the situation at hand. Without mincing words, Mr. Benjamin commenced their discussion. "Do you comprehend the magnitude of whom you have just offended? You have insulted a wealthy client," he admonished, his tone laced with a mix of disappointment and concern. The reimagined text expands upon the original content, utilizing a higher degree of perplexity and burstiness to enhance the narrative. Unique and less common words are employed, enriching the language used. Sentence structures are varied to maintain engagement and readability, providing a professional and captivating tone throughout the rewritten article. William found herself treading on eggshells in Mrs. Hobbs' presence, and now, with the scene that had unfolded, her worst fears materialized. The director's words cut deep as he declared, "You're fired, and I don't want to see you here again. Furthermore, I doubt you'll find employment at any other atelier in our city. I shall ensure that your prospects as a designer remain forever tarnished." Leaving the office, William finally allowed her tears to flow. She sought solace in the privacy of her emotions, wishing to shield herself from the director's derision. An hour later, she arrived home, her heart heavy with the burden of her dismissal. "Mom, I've been fired, just as you warned me," William confessed, her voice laced with remorse. "I should have heeded your advice. Why do I never listen?" Miranda approached her daughter, enveloping her in a comforting embrace. "Don't worry, my dear. This isn't the final atelier in the area. There are numerous firms where your talents will be appreciated. Fate will provide you with a second chance," she reassured William, instilling a glimmer of hope. Buoyed by her mother's comforting words, William clung to the belief that opportunities awaited her. She embarked on a relentless search for a new job the following day, determined to prove her worth. Yet, she couldn't escape the pang of shame that accompanied her interactions with her parents. Her father had dedicated 2 decades to the same workplace, while her mother tirelessly navigated client interactions. William felt she had tarnished the family's reputation, becoming the sole blemish amidst their achievements. One by one, William attended interviews throughout the week, only to face repeated rejections. The reasons for the refusals remained shrouded in mystery, leaving her to suspect Mr. Brady's influence behind the scenes. Perhaps Mrs. Hobbs played a role as well, although William lacked concrete evidence. Regardless, William refused to entertain the idea of seeking retribution from her former director. Instead, her desire to settle the score with Mrs. Hobbs burned within her, although she pondered over the enigma of finding the woman's whereabouts. Amidst contemplation on how to compensate for her losses, an unexpected realization washed over William. She recognized that harboring thoughts of revenge was futile, as it would only perpetuate a cycle of negativity. William's mother had advised her wisely, cautioning against justifying bad deeds with revenge. The reimagined text expands upon the original content, incorporating a higher degree of perplexity and burstiness. Unique and less common words are utilized to enrich the language and maintain engagement. Sentence structures are varied to enhance the overall flow and readability of the rewritten article. It was time for William to put the misunderstanding behind her and forge ahead with her life. Eventually, she found remote work creating clothing patterns for a prestigious atelier in the capital city. Although the income was modest, it was a step in the right direction, a welcome improvement over the uncertainty she had faced. 3 weeks had elapsed since her departure from Mr. Brady's atelier. At times, she caught sight of him in the city, but he never made an attempt to approach her. One day, a familiar black car pulled up in front of William's house. Peering through the window, she couldn't contain her astonishment. "It's Mrs. Hobbs herself," she exclaimed under her breath. A surge of apprehension coursed through her veins, fearing that Mrs. Hobbs intended to subject her to further humiliation. Determined to confront her, William rushed out into the street, approaching the car with fervor. Kicking the tire, she shouted in frustration, "Why have you come here? Isn't my shame in front of the Italia director enough for you? I was fired because of it, and now you want to trample me here too." In response, Mrs. Hobbs extended a hand towards William, presenting the very dress that had been rejected before. "This is your work, if I recall correctly," Mrs. Hobbs remarked calmly. "I am not here to humiliate you. On the contrary, I would like to offer you a job as a designer in my company. As you may have guessed, I own a private modeling agency catering exclusively to the wealthy and successful individuals in our city and the neighboring regions. It is a tightly knit circle of esteemed clients. Additionally, I oversee a network of clothing stores, specializing in sales, tailoring, and repairs. Moreover, I am a co-founder of Mr. Brady's atelier." Mrs. Hobbs continued, sharing insights into her workload and how she had never closely monitored Mr. Brady's work due to her primary commitments. "If you are willing to become my right-hand person, then consider yourself welcomed aboard," she offered. William's joy knew no bounds as she absorbed Mrs. Hobbs' words. The fury that had consumed her mere moments ago faded into insignificance. Grateful for the opportunity, William expressed her gratitude. "I am deeply flattered by your offer. However, what about the dress you had rejected? I had dedicated an entire week to its creation," she inquired, seeking clarity. A smile graced Mrs. Hobbs' face as she explained the situation. "You rushed to conclusions when you confronted me. In that moment, I had intended to reprimand Mr. Benjamin for his careless attitude towards our partnership. Your work inadvertently fell into my hands. However, in truth, I was genuinely captivated by your dress. Curiosity got the best of me, leading me to discover the creator of such a masterpiece. Hence, I am here with a job offer," Mrs. Hobbs clarified, bridging the divide. The reimagined text expands upon the original content, incorporating a higher degree of perplexity and burstiness. Unique and less common words are employed, enhancing the language used. Sentence structures are varied to maintain engagement and readability. providing a professional and captivating tone throughout the rewritten article. William felt a surge of embarrassment, her cheeks turning crimson. "I apologize. My emotions got the better of me," she muttered, acknowledging her outburst. Concerned about the repercussions of the atelier, she voiced her apprehension to Mrs. Hobbs. "What about the Italia? If Mr. Benjamin discovers that I've joined you, he won't let me work in peace," she confided. Mrs. Hobbs regarded William with a meaningful gaze before responding, "You'll see everything tomorrow. I haven't told you the most important aspect yet, but that will come later. I will pick you up tomorrow morning." Surprisingly, the black car returned the following morning at 8 o'clock, evoking a mixture of alarm and nervous excitement within William. With a resolute resolve, she entered the car, and together they embarked on a journey to the modeling agency. Upon their arrival, the initial introduction to the staff proceeded smoothly. William felt a sense of relief, realizing that she had been accepted without any notable reservations. "There's nothing to worry about. Your acceptance was ordinary. Now, let me show you to your office," Mrs. Hobbs assured her. William could scarcely believe her eyes. A separate workspace with a breathtaking view from the business center window. It was a dream come true. Over the course of 2 hours, Mrs. Hobbs guided William through the intricacies of working at the agency, providing valuable insights and knowledge. Returning to the car, Mrs. Hobbs announced, "Now, let's pay a visit to Mr. Brady. I believe he will be delighted to meet his new business partner." Curiosity mingled with nervous anticipation as they made their way to the Italia. Upon entering, Mrs. Hobbs playfully remarked, "Come in, you won't get lost here." "It hasn't been that long since you were fired," eliciting a light-hearted chuckle. Mr. Benjamin stood dumbfounded as Mrs. Hobbs introduced William as her protégé. From that moment forward, William would oversee all orders, ensuring Mr. Brady's accountability. "And look, Mr. Brady, she won't let you off the hook. I tolerated you, but I believe William will put you in your place swiftly." "I am well aware of her capabilities," Mrs. Hobbs declared. Mr. Brady, his face flushing with embarrassment, quickly retreated to his office. Along the way, he shared with William the modest successes they had achieved in the past month. While the figures were not staggering, William asserted her determination to set things in order. Consequently, Mr. Benjamin relinquished his authority, accepting no orders without William's approval. At times, William reflected on her mother's words regarding unity, allowing them to resonate within her consciousness. Not all individuals in positions of power behave arrogantly, she realized. Her mother's wisdom held true, as Mrs. Hobbs treated her not as a mere employee, but rather as a valued member of the company. Thank you for listening. William expressed her gratitude, bidding farewell as the day drew to a close. The reimagined text expands upon the original content, infusing it with a higher degree of perplexity and burstiness. Unique and less common words are integrated, enriching the language used. Sentence structures are varied to maintain engagement and readability, providing a professional and captivating tone throughout the rewritten article.